Okay, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Malt Travail podcast. This is episode 11. Good evening, Bruce, and good evening, Nick. How are we doing?
Good evening. Good, thank you.
Good. Yep, we are. This is going well. We're recording this on the 8th of April. So hopefully it'll be out on the airways by the 9th. And there's that little glint, although we've just been saying about the weather, that obviously on Monday, possibly, we might be having a draft beer at some point. Bruce, where are you going to have your first pint next week?
Unfortunately, I planned to go out from work at 5 o'clock or even at lunchtime, but Christy's now working Monday evenings, so I think we've been desperately trying to spend all day booking a table at the judges' lodgings, and my friend John is on with that now, so I'm hoping to be sat out at the front of the judges' lodgings on Monday lunchtime, probably having a pint of well, if I can face one, a pint of Thwaites, yeah.
Right. Nick, what yourself? Are you planning a pint next week?
Well, it's like we've been saying, it's a bit difficult to know who's going to be open and who's not really until the day actually comes, I think. I would be keeping it local. Now, I'm not sure that my first choice would be the New Malton in the middle of the marketplace, but because they're predominantly food-based, I don't know that they'll be opening just to serve drinks outside. They ain't got an area, but I'm sure that the old Malton Royal Oak, Steve up there may be opening because he's got quite a decent sized beer garden in the back that he's always operated. So possibly get myself up there, up to the old Malton Royal Oak. He always has 2 or 3 real ales on as well. That's the other question, of course, isn't it, as well? Landlords may be reluctant to put too much real beer on. Not going to sell it, and certainly not to give an option of, through lockdown last time, so keeping it down to 1 or 2, simply because in case we get locked down again and we're not getting the customers coming through, at least it means that the beer's not sitting around too long. So that'll be another conundrum probably.
Weather could have a big bearing on I suppose brewers are looking at potential weather forecasts out there, really.
Yeah. Although they seem to be brewing. I mean, I've seen quite a few drays about around us. I passed one of our Titanic pubs today, and they were delivering. So, and as I mentioned before, I'm hopefully going to be in Whitby. Although we had a bit of a false thing this week. Got an email yesterday telling me that I couldn't go because the place we were going had a shared lobby. Anyway, managed to. Nick's got his Whitby glass as well. Managed to rebook somewhere else in Whitby that's also got a shared lobby, but apparently that's okay. So not really sure how we're doing really. And it looks like Nick's on the Whitby tonight. So
my trip to Hamburg got cancelled as well. I've been spending days looking at all the pubs and beer kellers in Hamburg to get cancelled.
So Nicholas, are you on the Whitby now? What have you started on?
I'm on the Bolton maker at the moment, starting a little bit lighter. So Timmy Taylor's Bolt Maker, and then done that well in anticipation of maybe having the real thing. Well, this is a real thing, but as in straight from the barrel. When we hopefully meet up and socially distance and have a pint together.
Right. Is it my internet or is it your internet that's going off? Bruce, can you hear Nick okay? Because he's
I can, yeah.
All right. I'll tell you what, I might just turn my camera off then, because my sound's gone a bit.
I thought we had a pregnant pause there.
Yeah, mine's gone a bit thing. And I was going to show you. I've just nipped down Morrison's to get a present for my godmother, who I'm going to pick a car up tomorrow in Birmingham. And I quick look down the shelves, and I've got a Thornbridge pink lemonade sour, which Morrison's was selling for £1.60. So I might put the camera on and show you that when I've poured it. I thought it might appeal to you, Bruce. A pink lemonade sour.
Yeah. So is it alcoholic or not?
No, it's 4%. Yeah.
All right.
I'm just pouring it now. So I'm gonna
330 milliliter can.
Yeah, a little. I'll just put me there. So it's that kind of little can, and it's quite. It's an interesting colour.
Okay, yeah.
That's pink lemonade, isn't it?
Yeah. So it's pink lemonade sour, 4.8% actually, and it's called Allot, and it's I thought one of Thornbridge's kind of craft. Allot is inspired by love and labour put into allotments around the country and named after supposed creator of pink lemonade. It's packed with classic garden fruit, strawberry, rhubarb, which complements the beer fantastically. So
Makes you wonder where they're getting the strawberries and rhubarb from this time of year.
yes, it's an interesting taste. Right, so we thought this week we'd just have a quick catch up. So I've called it Easter Reflections. We hit our double figures last week of podcast, so we are we're gonna have a break next week as well. And we kind of got to this bit where we were not sure about where we were going to kind of go next. So that is hopefully the plan. As always, just got a few bits and pieces to pick up from last week. Really enjoyed last week's podcast. It was great having Kieran abroad, and we, listening back to it, we had a really good chat about, didn't we, North Yorkshire and the railways and the moors and the coast, and I think we covered some cracking pubs. I've worked out that on average we talk about 25 pubs on each of these podcasts. So that means that over the last 3 months, we've actually talked about over 250 pubs, which is just bonkers, isn't it? It's just crazy. And again, I guess it's why we miss them so much, really. So, Nick, you sent us this. Now, you mentioned this last week about Whitby. We talked a little bit about, I think you mentioned that they've still got the biggest trawler building shipyard up there on the river as you go past the kind of marina bit. And you mentioned that you'd seen a picture of this German a destroyer, right? It's a huge
light,
thing, isn't it?
Light cruiser, which was the spoils of war after World War One. This was something that Germany had to hand over to Great Britain. So this was a German light cruiser. Doesn't look too light, does it? But it's just immense compared to, as you can see, it's a wonder they managed to get it into the harbour up the river anyway. And then what a job it must have been to start on and take that to pieces and take it back down to nuts and bolts again.
And again, just for those that are not on the YouTube, this is a huge. It's towering above the street. There are There 3-4 story houses in Whitby on the side of the river there, and it's towering above them. How the hell they got it through the bridge? I presume the bridge was there. I don't know how old the bridge is. The bridge must be Second World War, wasn't it, or First World War? Was it? I would imagine.
No, the bridge swings though, doesn't it? So it doesn't lift. No,
as well. It must be. It must have to wait for a really high tide for it.
Yeah.
So
that's it. It would have probably been, the harbour. They would have been dredging it more frequently than they are nowadays, Bruce. In those days, all the rivers were dredged as well. Even Bolton. That's why Bolton became a centre for brewing, because it was navigable down to the Ouse and then the Ouse into the Humber. So literally, you could get in a boat in Bolton and chug off down the river and end up in Hull if you wanted to. But then that was superseded when the railways arrived, when they were bringing, goods from the coast by railway. And then the river started to silt up. And that's a lot of local people think that's part of the problem now with the flooding in Bolton, even though the environmental agency say, no, it won't make a difference. But surely if you dig out 3 foot of mud at the bottom of the river, it provides 3 foot more space for water, doesn't it? But Absolutely. There we are. Yeah,
because if you walk down the river at Whitby, which again I'll hopefully do next week, there is actually quite a lot of obviously the old stays and quite a way up, almost to get all the way up to Russup. So obviously, like you're saying, there probably was a lot more traffic going up and down that river, which is amazing. Because what else could get by that massive boat? If that's up on that slipway at the top end there, not much could get past it, really, could it?
They used to bring timber ships in, didn't they, Bruce? Yeah. From Scandinavia.
They did, and to tell you what, the contract for tipping it were Slaters at Pickering. Yeah, they operated that yard, and that was the last working boat to go in was brought timber and stealing, I think, from Holland. And Slaters. Yeah,
they were quite sizable cargo boats, weren't they?
Yeah.
And then, of course, the other big was it Allen, wasn't it? That the kind of mine up the north end of Whitby, because again on that Kate Humble programme, they were saying that they were at Port Mulgrave, and that was a massive port. It's nothing there now. It's literally a bit of a beach, and they were saying that. And then some guy was also saying, some guy from National Trust was saying that there's something like 5,000 shipwrecks off Whitby because it was such a massive trade. Obviously, coal from Newcastle going down to London, the alum trade, it was used for dyeing, and urine came up because they had to use human urine to fix the alum for the dyes. So as boats went down with the coal, they came back full of piss from London, and people were actually paid to piss in the pots. This is where the piss pot comes from, and you got paid a penny a pot, and that's where it comes. They could not get enough urine to kind of fix this, whatever you have to do with alum to fix it. So they were, so they sent the boats back up, smelling a bloody full of piss. So that'd have been a nice one. It's stale urine on a boat for God knows 3 weeks.
Well, now we put it in our diesel cars, don't we? Anybody who's got a blue system on the car, that's basically all that is. It's synthetic urea.
So I'm going to come back with a couple more things about Whitby that I just picked up as well. Now, I think I got Bruce this week. Bruce was on about last week. Bruce was on about April Fools, and we had a bit of a discussion. So this cropped up in Twitter, I think, last weekend. So I said to Bruce straight away, Bruce, look at this, mate. This will be cracking. And I think Bruce actually went after Trembling Madness, did he? Tell look, see if they got any.
About the cream egg beer, it seems so convincing.
Absolutely. Well,
this is it. With different beer flavours now, you can't know. I mean, what you drinking tonight? That's a case in point. Yeah. Are you sure that wasn't April Fool that Thornbridge have done, and they're just trying to get rid of the stock?
So again, for those on YouTube, this was a tweet of a picture of Northern Monk, who said that they were going to collaboration with Seabrooks, the crisp makers from Bradford, and there was going to be a cheese and onion lager flavoured Northern Monk beer. So Bruce duly went after the beer shop to see if he could find any. But you're right, Nick. So actually, I started digging a bit here, and I came across this. So actually, Northern Monk actually did for real. And obviously, we've talked about Yorkshire pudding beer, but these are real beers. These are not April Fools. So Northern Monk, a couple of years ago, teamed up with Auntie Bessie's, who make the frozen Yorkshire puddings, and they did a Sunday dinner, roast dinner brown ale, 5.7%. And then they also did a Northern Monk Aunt Bessie's Jam Roly Poly Jam and Custard Pale Ale at 5.7%. And if you go on Untapped, you can actually find reviews of these beers. I've got to say, they don't score particularly well, but people will do very mad things. And again, I know we mentioned the Bolton Brewery, but again, they've been quite a lot out this week with their rebranding, where they show you the Yorkshire puddings that go in. So yeah, apparently these were real beers. Northern Monk, a Sunday dinner brown ale, and a Jam Roly Poly pale ale. So I don't think they're doing them now. So, and I've got to say the reviews were a bit low. So, but
Jam Roly Poly one sounds better, doesn't it?
Yeah. Well, we've got the monthly food farmers market in Malton this weekend. So I'm hoping the Yorkshire Pudding Brewery will be there, so I'll maybe go and try and secure us some beers. So I am meeting with you sometime, Mike. I'll try and get some.
Well, again, have a chat with Howard about whether we can maybe try and fix a date when we can have a chat. Can we do a Malton one?
Yeah.
So again, I just started at Seabrooks is a again, for those from Yorkshire, Seabrooks were probably the crisp of choice for Yorkshire kids when we were growing up.
They were the original crinkle cut.
That's right, yeah.
I think they started on crinkle cut before everybody else, and they also moved on to using sunflower oil as well. That's right. Long before a lot of other crispy people. So they're a very traditional company. I don't know if you can get them nationally. Or whether they are regional.
Supermarkets sell them,
Right. Yeah. So again,
ones do taste better, though, I have to say.
I remember these. Obviously, I remember these, Nick, when we used to go to my dad's school. And he had, and the crisp man used to come, and I remember smoky bacon ones. They were like, I mean, God knows what they were on them. It was like a pink dust, wasn't it? You kind of lick all these kids licking the pink dust. But I've got the flavors in a minute. Again, really interesting. So apparently, this was a fish and chip shop in Bradford. And he asked for some photos to be done. And when he went to collect the photos from Boots or wherever, as you would in those days, they, instead of saying Mr. Charles Brook, that's what it was, it said Seabrook. Because obviously he said, please label them Seabrook. So that's apparently how the name came across, that Charles Brook had a fish and chip shop in Bradford. And he sent off some photos, and they came back with C, as in the CEA Brook. So the Seabrook, and that's where the name came from back in 1939. And as you said there, that I think then his son came back from the Second World War. He was in the Navy. And I think he may have picked up this idea of making chips, as the Americans call them, this idea of about diversifying. And they started to produce these Seabrooks Crisps. And again, as Nick said there, they were the original crinkle cut crisps. They moved into their first factory in the 1950s. And then a bit of a theme. Guess what? In 2019, they were bought out by a Japanese firm called Calbee, who apparently are a big leading snack brand. So interesting little thing. Obviously, they're still around. And this is what I found this as well. This is, again, for those on YouTube. This is just all their old flavors, and I just remember all these packets really were fantastic. So they had pickled onion, spring onion flavor. I can remember Worcester sauce flavor, cream cheese and chive flavor, roast chicken. Remember, smoky bacon were my favorite. I like tomato sauce flavor as well. Canadian ham. So yeah, they were quite a bit of always a nice big thick bag as well, weren't they, Seabrook? And quite a nice one in the pub to kind of keep in your best bitter. So Seabrooks Crisps, yeah, very nice.
Well, they were common in the pubs around us, weren't they? With it being a regional crisps manufacturer. So more often than not, if you went into a pub in Bolton and asked for a bag of crisps, you'd get these rather than Walkers or Smiths or whoever else was around. Canny bag of chowder, as it was up in the northeast.
Now, on another theme, which again, as we've said, things keep coming. So this was one of the ladies who works for camera, or volunteers, one of quite high up, actually just put herself forward for the national executive. She tweeted that she'd got a best egg was that she'd got a proper egg, a proper job egg from St. Austell. So again, another collaboration. St. Austell Brewery have teamed up with a local college business called Chocolada. And they decided they would make a beer-inspired Easter egg. Unfortunately, you don't actually get a bottle of proper job in the egg, unfortunately. Which when I first thought it, I thought, "Oh, is it?" It's not. But apparently,
I'm just thinking it was more like a coconut. You put an all on top of it, and it was full of proper job. Stick a straw in it, or just knock the top off and drink it out as though you're on some sort of Cornish island somewhere, stranded and marooned.
And apparently it's just 1% is made up of proper job in the cocoa that they use. So it's stretching it slightly. I guess it's good marketing, isn't it? So again, you could buy it. It wasn't cheap, £15.50 for a proper. I'm not even sure what it had inside it. Maybe nothing. I just read the blurb and it said that each egg had 1% proper job IPA. So
I'd rather have 10 bottles of proper job from Lidl.
Absolutely.
$1.59 a bottle.
Yeah, so there we go. So beer news, just a couple of things for me this weekend. I've got the Brewdog virtual AGM. So again, the two guys who run Brewdog are going to do a thing for 5 o'clock. So they've sent out a case of beer to the members. So among the other delights I'm going to be drinking on Saturday night are Albino Squid Assassin. It's one of their beers they've brewed. A 14% Imperial Stout with chili and cocoa nibs, and Mega Trash Lager, which is apparently now they use all the trash cans, so they call it Mega Trash Can Lager. So I'll report back that when we next meet in a couple of weeks' time, see how that goes. And then the other one is the week after that. I think the camera was going to be in Sheffield this year, wasn't it? I think, sorry, the members weekend, when all the members get together, was going to be in Sheffield, and that's normally, again, Easter time. So I think it's quite a good idea, really. The camera, regional Sheffield and district camera have got together and they put together a highlights of Sheffield beer box. The mine arrived yesterday. And again, they're going to do a beer tasting, beer chat. So there's some quite nice beers there, Nick, about in Sheffield, Abbeydale, Neepsend, Callum Island. That Farmer's Belgian Blue, me and you took quite a lot of that in a pub in the Peak District not so long ago, which I quite like. Yeah. So that's quite a nice little box. I'm looking forward to that. That's a week on Saturday. So again, I'll feedback on that really. And as we mentioned, I think Sheffield might be one of our first little trips out when we get. I really want to go to the Cutlery Works, which looks really nice now. And apparently there's even more, bars and clicking up, and quite a lot of some good breweries there as well, aren't there? You forget actually how some good breweries.
Well, we were going to the Cutlery Works, weren't we, Bruce? But found out they were open on a. I think, did we go on a Monday or Tuesday? Yeah. So it's more than likely going to be a weekend anyway. Our first trip out in it. So
we'll see. So that was the highlights. And we've done this a little bit. I know, Bruce, you shared this picture of a snowman in a pub garden. I think if it had been this week, I think much business for the first part of this week. It has been bloody cold. But as we mentioned, obviously on Monday, this week, Boris stood up and told us all everything is going to plan. And the rollout continues, so the lockdown roadmap goes through. So the big date is next Monday, the 12th of April, where non-essential shops can open. And as we've been talking about, pub and restaurants can open, but outside only. As we said, it's still quite hard really to find out who's open, who's not open. I think me and Bruce were chatting. Our local papers have been quite good, actually, kind of listing which pubs are going to be open.
Yeah, press has been really good.
Quite a few around me here in Stoke are, but I say we're off up to Whitby and hopefully meet up with Nick. But again, we find it quite hard, Nick, can't we, to find anything that's open or find a bit more detail.
Even the biggest chain pub I know of in Whitby just checked tonight, and they're not open until May the 17th. I know then they're talking, but there again, they're still talking about serving food outside of May 17th.
Yeah.
Well, as far as I know, May 17th, they're allowed to.
Yeah, it says there, pub and restaurants open indoors. Yeah, I've got the roadmap on the screen there. I know Wetherspoons is open, Nick, innit? We'll end up in Wetherspoons, the Angel, in Whitby. Because I know that the Whitby one is one that's going to reopen because they have got quite a big sitting area, haven't they? And I wonder whether they're going to use that little lane at the side as well.
Well, there's the lane, there's that parking lot as well. I don't know who owns it, but it's always empty. It's fenced off, so that would be ideal to move some furniture over there as well, really.
And as we said, quite a few pubs we mentioned the Fox in York, where Bruce is close to, have got their marquees up. We've got quite a few around here that have got big marquees up now. So I think everyone knows. I noticed quite a lot of not doing bookings. They're just saying, we're just going to do walk up. We're not going to do bookings. Just going to walk up. Big thing about
the Fox that this year, this time round, this lockdown, it was all enclosed before, was it, Nick? Where this time they've rolled back the ends of the marquee, so actually the long side that's still going to be enclosed. They're going to have air going through from both sides.
Well, that's how it should be, Bruce. That's how it should be. I mean, if they use common sense, all they have to do is keep the one side out, the three sides down, whichever way the wind's blowing.
That's right.
Yeah. So we said about where you might go for your first beer. What about if you had the choice of one of those 250 pubs that we've talked about over the last 11 weeks or so? If you had free choice, where would you want to go?
Well, let me see. Now the fire's no longer. I mean, I think with hindsight, I keep talking about. I actually think, when I think about it, I think probably the Victoria at Durham. I think. Especially with the nights being like this, dropping in now, they'll have the fires lit. Much as I love Nellie's is stunning. I think that Victoria, the way they maintain it, it's totally preserved. The original features there are fantastic. 3 rail fires. I mean, it is like stepping back into a well-maintained Victorian inn, isn't it, Nick?
Yeah.
You've been there, Michael. It is absolutely stunning. I think that's probably, it must be one of the finest 5 pubs in the country.
Yeah, I mean, the issue with me, Bruce, it's small, and I don't think it's comfortable. It's what I call very utility. It's upright little wooden chairs or upright seating. The regulars tend to sit at the bar. It's a good pub. It's a historic pub, but in terms of being comfortable, just to sit there all afternoon and just lean back and enjoy my beer, I don't know that it would be in my top 3, to be honest with you. I can think of other places where, I'd be a lot happier walking in, sitting down on my own, because I have been in there on my own, actually. Last time I went up in Durham with our lass. She had to go and do a bit of shopping. She had to go and buy a birthday present to somebody. So I said, I managed to park down there. So I said, all right, I'm going to Victoria then. I went in there on my own. And there's always a thing when a pub it's fairly quiet and it's fairly enclosed as well. So I was sat away. Nobody really took me on to engage me in conversation, and I didn't want to butt into anyone else's conversations. But it was like people are aware that you were there, because it's not one of them pubs that you can sort of sit on the periphery and just watch the world go by, because they say it's such a small place, really. So when Michael posed his question to us before we started, I think originally I'd said the Palace in Dublin. I think that's the place where you can go in on your own and sit and watch the world go by. And you'll know this better than anybody, Bruce, seeing that your ancestry is Irish. You're about guaranteed that if you sit in a pub on your own in Ireland, somebody will come and talk to you. They'll allow you to be included in their conversation, and they don't see that you're being nosy or rude if you just happen to speak to them across the pub, as it were. And whilst that's the Palace is the most comfortable places, because it's just wooden chairs in it, certainly in that back room there. It's big enough to be able to sort of almost blend into the fixtures and fittings and watch people come and go. And once again, the sort of people coming and going as well. Whilst the Palace does regulars, it is getting a bit better known now on the tourist map because, it's at the end of Temple Bar there. So you get a mixture of people going in. Whereas I would say the Victoria in Durham, it is more of a regulars or a locals pub. And I'm not saying that you'd have any issues in there, but in terms of being able to relax and get involved in a conversation, I don't think it's as easy to do that in the Victoria as it would be in the Palace, for example.
Yeah, but to be honest, obviously I've got pubs in York by myself all the time. I'm happy to sit there reading newspaper, but very rarely now do I wander into a pub in York and strike up conversation with strangers. I suppose because I'm from Malton, small town, pretty much second nature for that to happen. But I think there'll be loads of people listening to this from bigger conurbations, and they'll be quite staggered that you wander into a pub and strangers would start a conversation up with you. Really, I think it's sad. It's very sad, but I think
No, I mean, I think you get
it.
away with that more in York because it's a tourist pub, and depending which pub you're going in, all the pubs in York are frequented, I would say, by sort of equal numbers of tourists and of what you could call locals or regulars. Even you think about the Maltings. The Maltings, Sean does have his regulars by sure, but there again, it is that pub that if you read any guide or any directory on York, and especially if you're coming into York, a lot of people come into York by train, it's one of the first pubs that you see as you walk in the city. And head in there, and you do get a lot of, shall we call strangers or tourists in there. And once again, I think the Maltings is a pub where you could engage people in conversation, as I certainly have before. You're not being rude, you're not being intrusive, but if you're sat at a table and somebody's having a conversation, they're quite happy that for other people to hear their conversation, once again, because there's no blaring music on, then it's sometimes you can engage in conversation, like you say. Sometimes you just want to sit back and read your paper or read a book or something like that.
Yeah, I think about Victoria, a bit like Nelly's well, really. At its best, it's got to be dark outside, cold, have those fires. Nelly's Nelly's is a great pub, but in the daytime, it's a very different proposition.
Yeah.
Than being on a dark night with the gaslights and things. Yeah. What about yourself, Michael?
Well, I was thinking what we talked about last week, actually, and I think if I had the choice, and it's probably nostalgic, I'd probably want to be the Spotted Cow, sat in that front little snug. Either table that's next to the bar, probably the one by the fire, so you can look across the bar, and go back about 20 years and have a really nice pint of Tetleys that used to serve in there.
Oh yeah.
So that would be my choice, I think. Or the other one that came in my head then was back in the Swan and Rushes in Loughborough, where as a student I spent quite a lot of Saturday lunchtimes just sat in there.
Sunday dinners as well.
Sunday dinner. We went in. Actually, when it went there maybe about this time last year. Actually, it was all right. It wasn't quite as I remembered it. So, I think I'd probably a nice pint of. I mean, they only have two or three good beers on, don't they, in the Spotted Cow if it's open, and that's a big if. So I think that's where I'd probably
I think that front room is conducive to speaking to people that you maybe not normally speak to. Yeah. By the nature of it. Once again, it's a utility room. It's not comfortable. It's not plush seating, and you can't almost fall back in your chair and go to sleep, can you? Yeah. Because it's wooden chairs and narrow wooden bench seating. But I would say.
Can you imagine being in there and James Herrick coming in after to play on the lowest country? I mean, you really could imagine that. The market there. Fantastic. Yeah.
And I mentioned that again. I think if I was local and if Whitby does get cancelled again, I think the place I would be going. I think Nick, I took you in here last Christmas, didn't we? Mellard's, which I've mentioned to Bruce is. Again, it's one of these kind of industrial, whatever the word is, refits. It was the pictures there on the screen there. It was it used to be a very cracking old little ironmongers and whole, one of those stores where you could buy anything if you're doing your house up. And it went into rack and ruin, and there's a picture there that shows it boarded up and breeze block windows and stuff, trees growing out the wall. And probably about 3 or 4 years ago now, I had a major overrun, and some great guys took it over. It's a really kind of nice, kind of crafty bar. They do 2 cask lines and then probably 8 keg beers. And thankfully, they've got a really large, in the picture there on the left-hand side, a big kind of sitting out area with a very nice picture of a duck being shot at, a mallard being shot at.
I like that mallard.
Yeah, it's great. And there's quite a nice area there. So I think they're not going to open all week. I think they're going to open from Thursday, I think, onwards. But I think that's probably where I'll probably have my first local pint. Although
But
again,
yeah, I mean, once again, Mike, that building, because it's full height.
yeah,
I mean, there's that much air
yeah,
flowing around in there that you can't see there being much difference between. All right, don't go mad, but allowing some people to sit inside. You've got your outdoor area. I mean, you've got such high ceilings. You've got far more fresh air in a building like that is an old building with all windows, no double glazed units, than a completely sterile supermarket that supermarkets have been able to operate with as many people as they want since year dot.
And as you can see there,
this just what gets me.
The windows fully open there, so those windows on the front completely open. So you've got those big arches. And again, you remember where the toilets were, Nick? They've done all that bit out now. There's kind of a where you can actually back trucks into that bit. I think it's where they had all the steel and stuff. And that, so that's double height ceiling. So anyway, that's
so they could almost. I mean, if they've retained their doors, they could almost open those doors up as well.
So we're having a bit of a reflection. So and again, we might think about some of these pubs as we go back through these. So I've just put up on the screen our 10 episodes that we've done over the last whatever it is, 12, 13 weeks. So we started off back in January with our kind of philosophy about beer trips. We then did our moon underwater with the perfect pub in episode 2. We then talked about planning, and we talked about the good beer guide and how we chose pubs. We then did kind of west from York. So we did Skipton and Keighley and Ilkley, places like that. Then we did Hull in episode 5 and East Riding. We talked about Beverley, did it with there as well. In episode 6, we did the Trans Pennine Rail Ale Trail. Fortunately, Bruce had to spend that evening in York A&E with his son. We did City of Beer, which was a good episode. I think that's probably got the highest listens so far. Nick then did as a labels, logos, and branding. Bruce then took us around the first part of York, which was the east side of the river. Is that right? East side or west side of the river? I can't remember what we said now.
West side
of the river. I need to change that. And then I think my favourite was last week when we talked about the North Yorkshire Moors Railway, going from Pickering, Malton to Pickering to Whitby to Robin Hood's Bay and Scarborough, which I thought was really good, and great to have Kieran with us as well. And again, possible some news about beer festival in the future, which again I think we're all cracking on there. Bruce, favourite episode we've done so far?
Yes, I think it was quite good fun last week because you forget about Birchall and things like that. People know about that, they enjoy it, and I like the Hull one as well. I like the Hull and East Riding one because Hull's one of those forgotten cities. Some great pubs there. Great to try and hopefully choose a few people to make the trip and visit those places and support those places. It's a proper city in it all. There's no airs of great days. It's great, and you've got Beverley nearby. I quite enjoyed that one, I have to say. Yeah.
Nick, how about you? Favorite episode so far?
Well, I like yours, Bruce, because I think I said this before. Just to have a city like York, you literally, it's not on your doorstep. It is your doorstep, and yet I know, not last time, Mike, but we sort of were thinking where we were going to go once when you came up, and we just said, well, why don't we just go to York?
Yeah.
And we did. We went round to the brewery, didn't we? And we did 7 or 8 pubs that we had been in before, but not for many, many years. Yeah. And it was 20 miles away from home. It was one ride on the train. It was all that we wanted it to be in terms of different pubs and range of beers. And yet we were back home again in half an hour, weren't we?
Yeah.
So as I think for diversity and history and beers and everything, it's we're talking about going the length and breadth of the country, searching out pubs and searching out different beer. But when you've got all that on your doorstep in York, we're very, very lucky. We really are.
And I said we're going to do we will do a second part 2 episode about York, probably in 2 or 3 weeks' time when Bruce gets back on his bike again. So we'll get some nice weather. Just a couple of things from Whitby, actually, we talked about last week. And I think posed a question about, obviously we talked about Whitby Brewery, but I thought there were other breweries in Whitby, and a bit of digging, and I did pick them out in that there was a brewery called the Whitby Brewery, which was up on the Ropery. And that was started about 88 and then stopped in 97. And then Black Dog Brew, which is the one I think, Nick, we were talking about with your Rattus.
Rattus, yeah.
Yeah, and which is one I think that's the one I was thinking about. They took over the Whitby Brewery Limited in, from 97 till 2000, and they again then I think moved out towards Fylingdales, but again one of those again. They stopped brewing in 2000, and Black Dog was then contract brewed by Hambledon Ales across there in Thirst. We've talked about a few as well. In 2006, brewery was sold and moved to the above address. And the picture on your right there is the brewery now is a apartment block in Whitby. I tried to look at Hambledon. It's interesting how many beers Hambledon do brew for other people now. They do quite a lot of these kind of, keeping labels going. Because I've not seen Black Dog for a while, Nick, and I wonder whether they were still doing it. And I couldn't see on Hambleton's website. They don't tell you what other beers they're doing. But Nick mentioned, I've put the thing up there. It was Ratas Black Dog Brewery Dark Ale, and that is that Black Dog Brewery thing on things like Untapped. It's still there, and it does say that it's brewed by Hambledon now. So maybe one to look out for. It might be something they do, as a kind of a seasonal beer now and then.
I mentioned that it was Jeff Woolens who I know went and helped one brewery to basically set up when he left Bolton Brewing. Can you think, Bruce, when that might have been?
Well, I was thinking that was 96. Would that be about 96, wouldn't it? 97, something like that.
Yeah, there was a bit of a bust up there in a part of the ways of the Bolton Brewery, and that was, I'd say about 97, I think.
96,
right.
yeah. Because I remember Jeff saying that's where he was helping out, and he was helping them, and I say that was their bit like Brasscastle's Bad Kitty. Yeah. The Ratus was the one that the brewery got its name for. Yeah. I think it won some awards, as a dark porter or whatever else, a dark beer porter. So yeah.
But again, interesting that there's just a Whitby Brewery now. There's not, well, again, it's one of those towns that not a lot of brewing in the past, which again is interesting. But I guess as a seaside town, that's probably you brought beer in. And then just again, the theme that we've been talking about for the last couple of weeks or so, especially when we talked about York and the temperance movement. We talked a bit about that the last couple of weeks, haven't we? About the way that there aren't many breweries in York, and we talked about the Roundtrees. Did you know that the tap house, I've got a picture of the Brasscastle tap house. Did you know that was a temperance hotel in the 1800s?
It must have been rebuilt then, because that wall I would say, is fairly new.
Yeah.
Above. And obviously the below was always a shop front. It was a handbag shop and very
handbag shop. Yeah.
A long while, wasn't it?
So there were two temperance hotels in Malton. I can find picture of the one. I can't find picture of this one. There are, if you kind of Google it, you get a picture of Yorkers Gate with this building halfway down it. And obviously this is where people who didn't want to drink or they were set up to try offer things. So it's great interesting that little link there. And I was listening actually to another. In fact, it was the World Cup of Breweries that I think Time for a Brew from York, the podcast. They're doing their where you vote which breweries you want. And they were talking about the Wales. Again, Wales hardly having any breweries even now. It's getting better. So that got me thinking again, and they then began to talk about that. And it was a similar thing, really, in that obviously Wales was very strong, both north and south, for Methodism and Presbyterianism. And they often had very much at the centre of their kind of faith was temperance, was not drinking. And so while they were, there's a picture here of Thomas Evans, Welsh Hills Lemonade, very much promoting soft drinks. And we talked about these as well a couple of weeks ago. And again, brewing in Wales, just found here. So there are now 78 breweries in Wales, which is great, but there are 149 breweries in just Yorkshire alone. And 150 breweries have closed in Yorkshire, which I got from one of my new books. And if you look on that, I've got a little graph thing on there that I got from a book about this. And back in 2002, there were actually only 13 breweries active in the whole of Wales. And it's only recently, and I'll come on to that in a minute, while there's been a bit of an upsurge. So it's probably 2013 when it goes to 75, 88 in 2015. It's actually dropped now to 78. So again, the whole of Wales are only 78 breweries, yet in Yorkshire alone, there are 194 breweries. And again, it's all about the temperance movement. It's all about that there was a massive thing about temperance, that people being encouraged not to drink. So there's a little picture there from Victorian, and lips that touch liquor shall not touch ours, and some very stern-looking Welsh women underneath it, and a thing from Aberystwyth.
They're still like that.
Yeah, but interestingly, there's some firsts in Wales. Wrexham was the first place to brew lager in the UK, because apparently there was a load of immigrant brothers from Saxony began brewing in 1882, and that became Wrexham Lager, which
I've been to their brewery tap. I can't remember what the name of the pub is, but it's full of rugby.
That's
rugby
right.
memorabilia, rugby pictures, and things like that.
And that was, again, the actual brewery itself stopped in 2000, but again, some guys managed to buy the name, and I've got their little logo, or they call it, they kind of, it's WXM, but it's still Wrexham. And like you're saying, Nick, they re-established themselves, I think, in about 8-9 years ago. And interestingly, there's the reason why the sudden surges, the Welsh Development Agency actually has put a lot of money into developing craft and craft beers and craft breweries as part of kind of making Wales again or whatever, building Wales back. And again, interesting, the Felon Fall Brewery, first brewery in the UK to actually sell its beer in cans. I think they had a dragon, didn't they?
They have a dragon as their logo.
Yeah. So it's interesting, again, just that theme that we've been talking about, intemperance and the power of the church, and we certainly talk about that in York quite a lot as well. Now, as for Malton, I came across this really interesting, I think in the good old days, the post office held a record of everybody in the town that was working in every business. And you could go in the post office and you could ask for this. So I managed to get hold of something from 1890, and this was held in the Malton post office. And this lists all the hotels, all the beer houses, and all the brewers and maltsters. So we know about Russell's Wranghams, because Nick's talked about them a little bit when he's in his cellar. We know about Russell's. I've never heard about Mortimer and Wilton on Savile Street. And Walker and John Walker on Castlegate. Never heard of that brewery in Malton. So
you sometimes get glass bottles, the old bottles that get dug out the dumps. I've seen John Walker bottles before. Yeah.
And then if you look at the list of pubs, I mean, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, I think, pubs. And then there is 6 beer houses. So beer houses, all they could sell was beer. They couldn't sell spirits. And again, looking at that list there, we've still got I presume that's the blue. It says Blue Hall, but I think that's Blue Ball, isn't it? And maybe it was the Blue Ball. The Blue Ball New Biggin, that's still there. We've then got the Cross Keys Wheelgate, that's still there. You've got Crown Hotel Wheelgate Sotheby, so that's still there. Now they're around the Rose and Crown. The Fleece isn't there anymore, is it?
No.
The George is still there in Yorkers Gate. Golden Line in the Marketplace, that's all shut up now, isn't it? Or is that going to reopen as a pub?
Pub's still there, but yeah, it's been closed for 3, 4, 5 years. Yeah.
Green Man, that's still there. New Globe is still there.
Shut, closed, open. Yeah.
Talbot, I don't know. That's the old Talbot in Market Street. Not heard of that one. Royal Oak Hotel Marketplace. You said, Nick, that's shut though, hasn't it? Recently.
That closed before Christmas, so that's been closed 6 months now.
We mentioned Spotted Cow, and then we've also got the Talbot. And then the White Swan, obviously, which again was a great pub, wasn't it? The White Swan in the good old days. But again, that's been closed a while. And and then I didn't recognise any of those at the bottom there, any of those beer houses, Bay Horse, Castle or Howard Ox, Elephant and Castle. So interesting. So I think when we do the Malton podcast, we need to look in some of those a bit more, really. And maybe try and find those buildings.
That's only the pubs in Malton as well, because of course, for our purposes, Malton and Norton are the same town, just one town divided by a river, and that's just to list any pubs in Norton, doesn't it?
Well, that was in the East Riding, wasn't it, Norton? So it probably would be a separate entity, really, as well. So
I thought there was more than that, actually, because I've got a list somewhere of all the pubs in Malton, but that's probably as in going over a couple of centuries. But that must run to 60 or 70 different pub names. So this must be like a snapshot of
1890,
like a census, isn't it?
Yeah. So interesting. So we might come back to that at some point in the future. So again, I just wanted, obviously we've talked about 250 pubs, and back in episode 2, we went through Orwell's list for the Moon Underwater, what made a perfect pub. And we all put forward our cases. And I think in the end, I chose the Bolt Makers. Bruce chose that as well, but we made him choose another one. So he chose the White Horse Nellies in Beverley. And Nick, as you mentioned tonight, you chose the Palace Bar. So I guess the next question is, does anybody want to change their choice after we've talked about another 250 pubs over the last 12 weeks?
No, because I think to take anybody into all those, everything elevates it. I think they can't believe that such a place still exists, really. It's like a piece of a living, working history. I mean, it's just a joy to sit in there, isn't it? Sadly, being afflicted by the Sam Smith price rise, it's just amazing. And to think until March last year, you were sat there paying £2 a pint makes it even more astonishing. I mean, it's totally, I can't think of anywhere else in the country quite like Nellie's, can you?
No, I agree with you there, Bruce. And like, once again, it's utility, but it's got so many different rooms, and those rooms have got different characters that you don't actually mind that.
No, but must be visited when it's dark. It's just not the same experience at all in the daytime, is it?
Yeah, no,
it's a
totally
totally
right.
different atmosphere.
Well, no, you sometimes you get that sunlight coming through the windows at different times of the day, and you see the dust in the air, creating that pattern. And I think pubs have changed now. There's no smoking anymore, because whilst I've never been a smoker, and whilst I didn't necessarily like smoking in pubs, in terms of a pub being traditional, that sort of added to it. You could see the cigarette smoke hanging in the air, sat there enjoying a pint and looking across the bar and the sunlight coming through the windows, as it were.
And you're sticking with the Palace, Nick, are you?
Yeah, I mean, a couple of other things I've talked about why, but the other thing, I know it's one of those myths again. We've talked about the myth that Guinness is good for you because it contains iron. I don't know. I always think that if I'm going to go to a pub and sit there all afternoon, I could probably get away with drinking 6 pints of Guinness and it not having as much of an effect to me as drinking 6 pints of beer. So in terms of having a conversation with somebody, after I've had 6 pints of beer, I start to talk rubbish. Well,
6?
Probably talk rubbish most of the time anyway, but yeah, quite. And then the other thing I like about the Palace compared to your two choices is that when you step outside, you might be in your own little fuzzy, happy world where you've had 6 pints of Guinness, you've had a bit of a crack, and you can amble your way down Fleet Street, down Temple Bar, and you can be smiling and talking and singing to yourself, and nobody will take any notice because you're in Dublin. Whereas you step out of the White Horse or at the Bolt Makers, you're stepping onto quite a depressing street that's just full of traffic, aren't you? And as you wander your way up the footpath, if you're singing to yourself or smiling to yourself and talking to yourself, you'll probably get some strange looks. Whereas in Dublin, you get away with doing that.
You probably get hassled.
There's no better than
Give us a favour. Give us a favour.
Stepping back outside into either the sunlight or the nighttime air, and you just got that happy feeling about you. And I say you can carry that happy feeling on down Fleet Street and in Dublin, whereas I don't think you can do that in Keith. You certainly can't do it in Keighley. Beverley ain't a bad little town, ain't a bad city. But so that's why I would go Palace rather than the other two.
But then that's interesting you said that, because obviously we would rarely sit in a pub for 2 or 3 hours, would we, these days? And I wondered that I wondered if you sat in a pub and drank the same beer, you probably could drink 6 pints. I think problem is we're always up and moving, and you're trying something else, aren't you? Maybe that's you're mixing beer up, aren't you, quite a lot? Whereas if you sat on the same, like we used to with Double Chance, and you sit and just drink Double Chance all night, you were pretty fine, really. So I mentioned to Bruce, I don't know, I might want to change mine, I think, because I don't think the Bolton Makers would be as good. Even it's fully open in June. I don't think the beer is quite as good as it used to be. And the Bolton Makers has changed a little bit since we were in there a little bit as well.
Certainly the outside's a lot more garish now.
Yeah.
Presenting there.
That was bad doing that to the outside.
And I've just reflected on last week, we talked about the Birchall Inn. And I think if you didn't have to go anywhere and you could just stop there, or you could just, I think said, stumble out into the lane at whatever, 11:30 that night and be transported home or whatever. But like Kieran does, just go and sleeps on a railway. That's what it is. We'll go to those railway carriages there at Goldford that you can hire. I think that'd be quite a nice place to drink, wouldn't it? It's a bit of everything there. You're in the country. I think you would get nicks. I think you would get people talking to you there. The rooms are so small, you've got to talk to everybody else because you're almost sat on each other's shoulders, aren't you? You got the sweetie shop.
A summer's evening, if you've been in there, sat outside for 2 or 3 hours until it starts to go dark, and then inside, and then you step out, and at 11 o'clock at night, you sometimes get those evenings where it's still almost light, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's quite warm, and the air's settled, and it's all Yeah, no, I would agree with you.
Or even getting snowed in there because you've got the sweet shop, so you need to keep yourself full of rations when you're just drinking beer and eating sweets for like 2 days. Or like the people were at the Tan Hill when they were snowed in for 2 days, weren't they? I've got a couple of pictures there, Nick, of the inside of the palace, because just talking about it. And the one on the left is the picture I mentioned that on that Irish pub film.
Yeah,
you can see they're the three kind of geezers that are on the bar.
Yeah.
The guy with the waistcoat, whatever it is, that's the guy that I think he's the bar manager. And I still remember him. And I'm sure I remember those other two boys as well, because they sit on that first. It's kind of partitioned, aren't they? The kind of old drinking partitions there that have got there. And as Nick said, if you can get on one of those, well, you can't move sometimes because if you get up, you won't be able to get out anyway. Like you said, it's that one where the beers will be passed down that row of bar there. So yeah, some good times.
The back room through the back. You know,
Yeah.
it's a typical pub and it hasn't got any windows in it, such, but it does have it has a skylight as well.
That's
in
right.
that back room, so it's not quite as dark and dingy.
I don't like it.
As a lot of the pubs it might go into.
I prefer to be sat down here though, if you could. If you get on one of those
a
little booth,
and then obviously there's that tiny little snug in the right hand corner. But I think you've almost got to be privileged to go in there. Yeah. Because, like you say, if you watch the program, they insinuate that little tiny little snug was only for business to be conducted in.
Yeah.
So I think, as a tourist or as a stranger, you'd be pretty lucky to get yourself in there. Yeah. You might be looked frowned upon if you sort of decide you're going in there and one of the locals want to use it. So,
Good. So we are thinking then, so we're going to have a week off. We just reflected today. I've just listed here the things that we probably got to do. So we've mentioned York Park. We've got it right there. Look, east side of the river. So Bruce is going to work on that, I think, next week. We've talked about Sheffield, Still City. I think we could probably do one there, Nick, and then you'll put something together for Sheffield and environs. We mentioned about three Yorkshire boys get lost in London, which we could come back to. We might, and I've got a plan there. I mentioned the lads about we might do something a bit different there. Just pick 3 pubs each, rather than because again there's thousands of pubs in London, isn't there? You guys have mentioned beer on the Tyne. We've got to do Newcastle and Durham for an episode. We've mentioned Malton, so we did a podcast about it. We've got a fantastic brewing heritage. We've got some good pubs. We've got some great new breweries there as well. I mentioned that we might be able to get Howard from the Yorkshire Pudding Brewery, as they're now called, on there as well. I thought, again, we might talk about Yorkshire breweries, part 1, 2, and 3, because we've talked a lot about Yorkshire breweries, and that might be interesting to have a look at, whether we split the county up or we do breweries of the past. People like we've mentioned Sam's that have been there forever. Some of those, those longer standing, and then a few of the new ones. We've talked about doing in Manchester. That's certainly, again, we've all been there a few times. Bruce has had a bit of I've spelled Yorkshire wrong there. Look, tell him I'm Yorkshire. Bruce had a little trip out yesterday, and I think was from the buzz, jotting a few good pubs down, Bruce, out kind of Pateley Bridge way, Harrogate way, that we could do a little tour there. And then Nick, we Camera's 50th year this year, and certainly again one of the kind of things that we did fairly recently was a nice little wander around St Albans, didn't we? Which has got again some interesting, quite a variety of pubs, really.
Stunning Wetherspoons.
Yeah.
And the Garibaldi. Do you remember the fullest pub down that sort of like little residential street? Garibaldi. Yeah.
And then we walked from there. We walked to that other pub, didn't it? It was really nice.
Yeah,
looked a little bit of the green.
Right, picking the real camera pubs. That
was a really good pub. That was a cracking little pub. That was. And then back into kind of the town centre. Yeah, so there are some good options, really. So I think we start to work on those. So I think probably next time we meet, Bruce, are we going to do York Park B in definitely. 2 weeks' time?
2 weeks tonight, yeah.
And then Nick, shall we do Sheffield maybe the week after that?
Yep.
And then I'll work on the rest, really, depending on, again, what we get lined up for people like Malton and things. That sounds very good. Good stuff. So it's been a bit short and sweet this week, but probably about right, really. Hopefully we're going to be well under the hour mark, which is going to be really nice. So we're going to have a week off next week. Hopefully we're all going to drink some beer, so we can talk about that at some point in the near future. Anything else anybody wants to chuck in for a final discussion round?
No, I've just started the Jet Black. Yeah, it's very very roasted, that one. I normally like it a bit sweeter. As far as my port is concerned, but it's a nice refreshing one. So as I say, hopefully we might get one of these without his clothes on next week, as in the one that's not coming in a bottle.
And I think
straight out the
I
tin.
think that definitely tastes better on cask. I think that as a pint, which
Mm.
I think it's probably the same with Bad Kitty as well. I think Bad Kitty last time I drank that was in with Unique in the Royal Oak in Old Bolton. That was stunning on cask, and it's not quite as the same in a tin. And I think probably the same with that one as well. That again, that was one of the last beers I drank with you in Whitby. We were drinking pints of Jet Black.
That couple in the Old Molten Royal Oak certainly enjoying it, weren't they?
They were, yeah.
I mean, what's the ABV on Bad Kitty? About 6%.
Yeah, it's quite strong.
And they had an old camper van that they'd parked on the Gannock across where the pub is, which is where the river is. And I think they were on about 6 pints each or something like that, weren't they?
Yeah.
They were very merry.
I mean, we threw a few back though, didn't we? We started getting into it, and it was very nice that evening.
We certainly didn't have 6 bad kitties, because some of us were working in the morning as well. So that was the other thing that surprised me, because I think when I drove past, I think the van had gone. So
all right, up and gone away early.
Yeah,
good stuff. Right, so I think that's it, guys, for this week then. So short and sweet, but been good to reflect back and just mention those pubs we've done. So we will hopefully back with you in a fortnight's time. So cheers, everybody, and hope if you're out next week, you enjoy your beers and stay safe. So I'm going to stop recording.